You are now tuned in to the Chaotic Culture Podcast.
It's the KKP on your mother flipping airways. Hear the name ringing through the halls and the stairways. You were listening to a pod that can segue. All the latest topics guaranteed to fill your headspace. It's a safe place to voice your opinion. Say what you feel just like you're a kid again. Kid to pro and friends black as obsidian. Chaotic culture, that's the world we living in. So what's the word?
Good morning, afternoon, and evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Chaotic Culture Podcast, the pod where chaos rules and black culture is supreme. The Chaotic Culture Podcast is brought to you by patreon.com/chaotic culture pod. Please be sure that you go to the Patreon to subscribe for bonus episodes, bonus content, and of course to help keep the lights on. Once again, we appreciate your support. Happy New Year, first and foremost. Ladies and gentlemen, we are into 2026 and we are starting it off with a bang. So if you've never turned into this podcast before or tuned into this podcast before, this podcast will, of course, deep dive into modern black culture and how millennials and Gen Z can navigate the crazy parts from finances, black business highlights, black professionals, community content creators, home ownership, HBCUs, sports, black nerddom, anime, wrestling, and especially black music. If it encompasses black culture, we are going to cover it. And live from the 410, I am the host and the creator of the Chaotic Culture Podcast. This is your boy, Ked the Pro, a.k.a. the Calculated Millennial, a.k.a. the Encore Presentation.
Can I get an encore? Do you want more?
A.k.a. your favorite toxic adjacent king, Ked the Poet, Ked the Closer, all that good stuff. 843 is me. Baltimore's the place to be. Always chaotic, never toxic most days. And back again, once again, with your favorite black culture highlights and black culture shenanigans. So initially, I was supposed to drop this episode at the end of 2025, and then I caught COVID. It happens. I caught COVID over the Christmas holidays. I kind of had to recover. It unfortunately it forced me to push this episode back. And so now here we are on January 1st, 2026, and I am dropping this episode as I record. And after I record, I'm dropping it immediately, so you will get it today. Again, I apologize, but unfortunately, I kind of wanted to be sure that I was healthy enough to do this episode. Still coughing a little bit, still got the runny nose, but pretty much I am over COVID. I thankfully, I believe in vaccines. And on top of that, I had the antiviral. So with that in mind, my system is clear. My head is clear. I'm ready to do this episode for you, which is the top 25 hip hop albums of 2025. I'm going to try to make this a tradition where we do this at the end of every year. So that way you can hear my thoughts on what I thought was the best hip hop albums each year. And I loved doing it for 2024. So I only thought, it would be great to do it for 2025. So with that, I do want to kind of get into this a little bit here. 2025 was a really, really, really great year, in my opinion, for hip hop. I know not from mainstream hip hop heads, they probably think it was a down year, but I think in general, just for hip hop, whether it be underground and especially from our legends, this was definitely a great year. And I would say Nas led the charge this year with, in collaboration with Mass Appeal Records for the Legend Has It series. And you'll see a lot of those albums on this list. And it just shows that you're really never too old for rap or hip hop. Yeah, maybe you're not, quote unquote, as relevant. But what it shows is that the elder statesmen of hip hop still got it. And I think that the Legend Has It series really just shone a bright light on to our legends, our elder statesmen, and those who've been in the game for quite some time. So this was really a good year for our legends, for our elder statesmen. And as I said, not a lot of mainstream artists really dropped good projects this year. But I also think that we're seeing a shift in how the public consumes hip hop and rap in general this year. And you can probably trace that back to 2023, where some of the pundits were claiming like 2023 was actually like the worst year for hip hop, even though it was like the 50th anniversary of it. And just in terms of mainstream, it just seemed to be repetitive, repetitive, repetitive. And then 2024 happened. And of course, we all know what happened in 2024 with resurgence in the genre brought about by the battle between one Kendrick Lamar Duckworth and the loser Aubrey Drake Graham. Now, I cannot guarantee that mainstream hip hop in general is just going to completely shift back to storytelling rap or away from trap music or mumble rap, whatever you want to call it. But I have observed that in at least throughout hip hop's time, that hip hop generally has a shift every 3 to 5 years. And this is the longest time that hip hop has not shifted. We've been going on this run of trap music for anywhere between like 8 to 10 years. So this has really been a long gap in a shift in hip hop. And now I feel that that shift is happening slowly, surely, but it's still happening regardless. That people are craving substance again, people are craving lyricism again, and I think that I don't want to say that they're gatekeeping hip hop again because I think that the genre of hip hop is too busted wide open at this point to gatekeep anything. But I think that a lot of the true hip hop heads and people who appreciate hip hop music, whether it be, dance music or whether it be the storytelling or whether it be, the lyricism, what they're doing is they're kind of like keeping the things to themselves or the great things to themselves. Like, yeah, we don't want y'all's outside opinions dictating how we feel about our hip hop music. At least that's how I feel. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about some albums that I just couldn't get into before we actually start this list. I will tell you that I'm not the biggest fan of mosh pit rap. Yeah, I like to have a good time. Yeah, I will participate in some mosh pits. And yeah, if it's in a party setting, then yeah. But if we're talking about just sitting down and listening to it, I just can't get into it straight up. Like I can't get into it in a normal setting. That's just me. So that's why I really couldn't get into Playboi Carti's I Am Music album. I do believe that a lot of people really, really love that album, but it just was not for me. I'm being honest. I also couldn't get into Shay's Rest in Bass. I think that that is the true definition of mosh pit rap, and I couldn't get into it. I'm sorry. Like I literally tried, but I couldn't get it into it. That being said, it's for somebody. It wasn't for me, but it is for somebody. So if that is the kind of rap that you like, then great. By all means, that is your role. That is your MO. You know, that's you. If you're a fan of the mosh pit rap or the rager rap, then that is for you. Also, let's talk about some albums that dropped this year that were just terrible, i.e., Lil Wayne's The Carter Six. I have never been so disappointed in a Carter series album like that before. Y'all know how I feel about The Carter Four. I think that it was kind of mid, but I've warmed up to it just a tiny bit, and I liked The Carter Five. But this, whatever the hell this was, that wasn't it. I'm sorry, Wayne. I don't know what it was, but that just wasn't what. As much as I love Wheezy, this is by far the worst entry into the Carter series, and should have never been released as such. That's just my personal opinion. And it's also kind of the same with the Young Thug album. I don't know what the hell he was doing, but that shit was trash, dumpster juice. Like, get that shit the hell out of there. Like, that album just makes me so mad. I gotta play that clip because yikes. I want to rage about that album so much, but I'm not going to because we got more important things to talk about. Just know that, yeah, that whole thing of saying the hard ER, that was already a turnoff, but the rest of the album itself just was not spectacular at all. So there's that. And I know I had him on my list last year, but if you're expecting to see 21 Savage on this list, you're not going to. I'm sorry. What Happened to the Streets was really, really boring to me. And it's like at some point you have to get into the booth and be creative or try something different in order to keep my attention. And if you're not going to put forth that kind of effort, then I'm personally not just going to like take interest in your album. I really feel like he hit his peak with I Am I Was, and even American Dream was fine. But this right here, whatever this was, What Happened to the Streets, it just was like, all right, bro, I'm bored. It's the same old raps, same old flows, same old beats. It's nothing new. And it you could tell people who really truly enjoy hip hop and enjoy making the music versus those who are just in it just to, get the money and go. And it seems that 21 is only in it to get the money and be out. You know what I'm saying? So that's just kind of how I feel about that. So for me, either grow and allow your music to grow with you, or continue to try to push the same old thing and face diminishing returns, which I hope that is not going to be the case for whenever Drake decides he's going to drop Iceman. I really hope that he's taking some time to reflect, to grow with his music, to talk about things that have happened to him that made him realize that he had some growing to do. Talk about some things in your life. Talk about being a father. Talk about, entering your 40s and what that feels like. Talk about, what your mom is going through, what your dad is going through. Talk about your struggles with, maybe gambling. But if you refuse to talk about that and just continue to make music that and trying to push a number and trying to make party music and whatnot, I mean, that's sort of kind of okay because that is kind of your lane. But I want to hear some growth in your music. I'm tired of hearing the same old shit over and over and over again, Drake. You have had diminishing returns since Certified Lover Boy. Like, that's when I realized, okay, your albums are really starting to get repetitive and garbage. But that's just me. I can have that whole debate about Drake for another episode. Let's get into some of our honorable mentions real quick. And it starts off with Cardi B's Am I the Drama. Now, this does get an honorable mention, but I have to preface this by saying that I think the album was just okay. And I believe the album fell short of expectations, considering we had to wait 7 or 8 years from this project. And that's about the time period that she had dropped Invasion of Privacy. And it's just like, okay, it's okay. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think production was fine, but nothing spectacular. I believe the energy she brought for certain tracks like Pretty and Petty or Bodega Baddie and Outside, that energy was good. But outside of these tracks, the Safe track with Kalani was good. And like the tracks that were released years prior, like Up and WAP, I mean, I'm not really counting those, but nothing else screamed at me. But it's not a bad album in no way or in no form or fashion. It's not a bad album. It's very, very decent or very, very just okay. I do think that this album was better than a certain Pink Wigs album from a couple years ago, because Pink Friday 2 was trash. And I enjoyed absolutely nothing from Pink Friday 2, despite what the MAGA barbs may say. So I just wanted to like leave y'all with that. Like, this album was okay. It was okay. So next on my list, as far as honorable mentions, we're gonna start off with Stardust by Danny Brown. And I think Danny does a beautiful job describing his road to recovery from addiction and turning his life around. I'm fond of tracks like The Book of Daniel, Lift You Up, and Right From Wrong. What keeps this album for me from reaching my top 25 for real is the use of more like electronic and pop sounds throughout the album. I'm not like really the biggest fan of that. And while they were appropriate and engineered perfectly for the story he was trying to tell within the album, it just doesn't resonate with me from a music standpoint. Even though I think that the lyrics and his rapping are, sublime as always, it's just it didn't work for me as far as the production. So I think that's why Stardust does, it doesn't make my top 25 list, but does get an honorable mention here. So 2 projects by Larry June make my honorable mentions list. And honestly, if I was doing a top 30, both of these would definitely be on here. And that is Life is Beautiful with 2 Chainz and Until Night Comes with production from Cardo Got Wings. And I think both of these albums are incredibly smooth, laid back. 2 Chainz continues to be like charismatic on all of these beats, and Larry June continues to make me feel disgusted that I am not wealthy. So both these projects just missed my top 25, but I know that Life is Beautiful has actually made a lot of top 25 hip hop albums lists. And honestly, there was just so much good hip hop. It was hard for me to try to include that. But both of these albums are really, really good. Definitely take it out. It's just really been that kind of year for hip hop. So there's that. Another album that just misses my top 25 is a little known project by an artist known as Prem Rock called Did You Enjoy Your Time Here? This album has some pretty good and crisp production, while Prem Rock, like, he kind of layers the tracks with introspective bars and outlooks that feel heavy but don't really take themselves too seriously, if you if you're picking up what I'm putting down. And some of these, like some of the standout tracks for me on this album were like A Good Man Is Hard to Find, Plunder, and Receipts with Billy Woods, who, and in my opinion, Billy Woods had a great 2025, but we will get into that later. Man, big shout out to Big Crit. He hit us this year with his latest project dedicated to Catalina Biritz. I think it's a great mini project by Crit. And while not one of his like usual introspective albums, this album I think is dedicated to like just straight bass knocking and trunk shaking. So this is a fun album to bang in the car. Just be sure you have the equipment to truly appreciate it. So Gotta Do It and The Mileage are standout tracks for me for this particular project, man. And I'm hoping to hear and see more from Big Crit in 2026. Mavi dropped a good project with The Pilot. If you're familiar with my list last year, you know that his last project made my top 25 list. This year, The Pilot is a very easy and easy to listen and ride to, and Mavi shows his pen game is still strong. I think The Pilot is not as creative, dark, and lyrically dense as Shadowbox. But what I do like about this project is it affords the listener an easy listen into Mavi's stories of sobriety and newfound success. I do think that this project in general is a potential setup for another major project. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Mavi does in 2026. Mac Miller graces us one last time with Balloonerism. I think that this album was pleasing to listen to at the beginning of the year, and it just shows the depth of creativity that Mac truly had. And while this wasn't his strongest project lyrically, because a lot of this stuff came from his earlier works, I believe the intent of the album was to give us some of his earlier abstract work and some of the things that he was working on. It kind of presents itself as a what could have been album. This album focuses on people raring to go somewhere but no direction to go in, and utilizing drugs as like a form of escapism. So recommend this project if you haven't checked it out yet. Now, I do apologize, of course, if my nose gets a little stuffy. Once again, I'm just getting over COVID. And yeah, I have to deal with that. But still, I do apologize if it sounds like I'm a little stopped up. And in the proverbial 26th spot is Don't Tap the Glass by Tyler, the Creator. And while this album really doesn't like have like the emotional and mature depth that Chromacopia had, Don't Tap the Glass, oh goodness gracious, Don't Tap the Glass serves as like a form of release therapy. This album is like very 80s coded, and most of the tracks are here to make you move, dance, get active, touch grass, and basically not tap the glass, which I think is like a metaphor for not touching your phone, but I could be wrong. My favorite track on here is Ring Ring Ring. I love Stop Playing With Me, and of course, Don't You Worry Baby. Big shout out to Madison McFerrin. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here is my official top 25 hip hop albums of 2025. And coming in at number 25, you have You Can't Kill God with Bullets by Conway the Machine. The Slant Face Killer has another one, whereas the aforementioned album, Slant Face Killer, only made my honorable mentions last year. This year's project cracks my top 25. Conway continues to rap on boom bap and jazz-infused beats while addressing personal issues such as his personal trauma from his 2012 shooting and subsequent Bell's palsy, struggles of fame, betrayal, and of course, losing loved ones. The samples of this album are incredible, and a slew of producers from Conductor Williams, Timbaland, G Herbo, who also like features as a guest on this album, Tony Yayo, Kendricks, Who Kid, and others create the atmosphere of this album. My only criticism of the album, it is a little bit too long and the subject matter can sometimes get repetitive. But otherwise, this album is incredible. It would be ranked higher, but it's a late entry to my list, so it's going to stay at number 25 here. But it does have the weight to be ranked higher. Some of the standout tracks for me are The Lightning Above the Adriatic Sea, Hell Let Loose, The Undying, I Never Sleep, Attached, and the bonus track, Don't Even Feel Real. Coming in at number 24 is Everything Is a Lot by Wale. And Wale returns with another smooth sounding album. This album kind of like dives deep into Wale's struggles with love, life, and alcoholism. Wale has this belief that therapy cannot help his struggles, and while I wish he would just sit on somebody's couch, at least he's able to turn his sorrow into songs. And Wale intricately weaves like soul samples and Afro beats together throughout the project. And I love some of the sample flips, specifically the song Belly, where he flips the back to life sample from Soul to Soul into an Afro beat. That was incredible. I also love Wale's conflict with the Bottle and Blanco and his struggles of finding balance in the song Power and Problems. Overall, Wale has a very solid project at number 24. But please, sir, go talk to that lady. That's all I got to say. Go talk to that lady. Coming in at number 23, we have A Murder of Crows with Mick Jenkins and Emo. And it's been about a year or, well, 2 years since I had heard anything from Mick. But he once again proves he is an elite level lyricist who should have received more recognition in the early 2010s. And Mick and producer Emo team up to deliver this album full of like dark UK jazzy production from Emo and like multi-layered raps and poetry from Mick himself. This tape falls more into like the experimental lane as it allows Mick to like try to do some different production that is not typically in his catalog, but still adds to his introspective and self-reflective bars, which like gives the tape a whole new life of its own. I think if you're looking for something that feels laid back, but also captures your attention lyrically, this is the tape for you. It's not going to like maybe immediately capture your attention, but if you pay attention, the album is definitely worth the listen. And standout tracks for me are Dream Catchers, Words I Should Have Said, Pundits, parentheses, Yappers, and Coco Golf. Coming in at number 22 is Who Did the Body by Mona Leo. This was a pleasant surprise for me. Shout out to Leo. I'm familiar with the work that she was doing this year, but I did not expect to genuinely enjoy this album as much as I did. For real, for real. From her talking shit in Life After Death and Sexy Solon to the Mike Will anthem Putting You Down, which is like kind of tailored to the on and offbeat rap crowd. And even songs like Locked In, where she's challenged herself to leave behind past relationships, and Spare Change, where she actually busts out some storytelling rap. I found like myself really enjoying this project more than I had anticipated. It's not a long project. It's only clocking in at 32 minutes. So, but if you have any spare time, definitely take a listen, especially if you love the rap girdlies. You know what I'm saying? At number 21, we have The Emperor's New Clothes by Raekwon, an elder statesman of hip hop, and of course, a member of the great Wu-Tang Clan. And Raekwon actually drops a thought provoking project through Nas's Mass Appeal Records here. So this is one of the first albums of the Legend Has It series that will be on this list. And this is Ray's first album in 8 years. And the best thing about this album is that it doesn't feel like a rush to get back into like the old spotlight. It's a very controlled and methodical album, no pun intended, to Method Man, and a methodical approach to his stories and his outlook on Black life. You got from the everyday hustle and street politics of Bear Hill to the balances of power in the underground world on the narcissistic track, The Omerta. Ray continues to weave in narratives of Black struggle versus materialism and paints a vivid picture of those sins behind closed doors. So I definitely highly recommend that you pay attention to this project. All right. And coming in at number 20, we have Light Years with Nas and DJ Premier. Now, this project was actually one of my most highly anticipated albums of the year, obviously because Nas was doing the Legend Has It series, and this would be the final album of the Legend Has It series for 2025. And Nas and DJ Premier like kind of bring us a very solid project. And on the internet, I know that some people were not too fond of Primo's beat selection, but for me, like after listening to it a few times, I will say like I don't have a problem with the selection. However, I will say that this is this album is a tale of two halves, for real, like with the second half being much, much stronger. But Nas, however, doesn't slip or falter one bit in his delivery or his rhymes. at this stage of the game, really, Nas doesn't really have to give us anything else, or he really doesn't have to deliver, but he continues to do so while Primo gives us more of those old scratch techniques, which made him famous over the years and as a main member of Gangstar, rest in peace, Guru. And as a fan, I will admit that I wasn't too fond of New York State of Mind Part 3 and the song Get Ready. I think Get Ready was okay, but as far as the beginning of the album, say what you will, but for me, Pause Tapes is really where the album like truly kicks into high gear, as Nas's lyricism about like sitting at the radio to record certain parts of songs to piece together for tracks is nothing short of like a great narrative. It's magnificent, y'all. I'm sorry. Nas also takes his time with tracks like Sons to part knowledge to the young kings out there. Nasty Esco Nasir sees Nas diving deep into his rap personas, and Bouquet is a wonderful tribute to the ladies of hip hop of past and present. Overall, I would put this project higher on my list once again if it wasn't such a late entry. But if you have not tapped in to Light Years by Nas and DJ Premier, please be sure that you do so. Coming in at number 19 is Mercy by the duo Arm & Hammer, which is Elucid and Billy Woods, who I just mentioned earlier. This is also another project that kind of enters late, and I was really content with just one Billy Woods project this year, but I think him and Elucid really came with a strong project late in the game. Now, I will preface this by saying if you're not a fan of offbeat raps or raps that don't even try to find a beat, it's more like spoken word. I don't recommend this, but however, if you're here for the storytelling and the production by Alchemist, this is the project for you. I think this album's themes consist of like violence, struggles with faith, survival tactics, and overall nostalgia. And Alchemist once again proves that he might be producer of the year with his precise beats for their lyrics. Some of the standout tracks from me are like Super Nintendo, California Games, and Calypso Jeans. Coming at number 18 is Thy Kingdom Come by the Suicide Boys. This is their 5th album from the New Orleans-based duo, and this album has like a really great mix of their typical style: hardcore rap, emo rap, horrorcore, 808s, raw lyrics, etc., etc. With this album, you can hear more of that 80s New Orleans bounce and that funk Memphis rap sound in their songs. And to be fair, I kind of honestly forgot about this group until someone reminded me to listen to their album that dropped like back in August. So I went and I listened and I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually really, really good. Like the production on these albums are amazing. It definitely takes some time to listen to this group if you haven't gotten the chance, and definitely listen to this album. The tracks flow well with each other, and like the themes of horrorcore are like, it's a pleasantly haunting experience, if that makes any sense. So standout tracks for me are Count Your Blessings, Napoleon, and Chainbreaker. And also on a side note, they just released another album called Thy Will Be Done at the end of the year. So if it's good, of course, I'll put it on my top 25 albums of 2026 because, again, it's such a very late project, so I wouldn't be able to put it on this list. Coming in at number 17, we have Live, Laugh, Love by Earl Sweatshirt. What I really love about this version of Earl is that he seems to have like found himself in the chaos of being that teen prodigy, of course, being sent away to a boarding school in Africa, coming back and trying to find his lane. I think this album reflects the growth of after returning to that hip hop scene. He's truly found himself. This project is like a continuation of Earl's growth as an artist who has found peace and comfort while exploring the themes of, being married and being a new father. Also, it's like a return to form because his rap seem crisp and his lyricism is even more powerful than they have been in the last few years. So definitely take your time to listen to this project if you haven't. Some standout tracks for me are Tourmaline, Crisco, and Exhaust. He's got more on there. Like, again, the project is really great, but those are my 3 standout tracks. Coming in at number 16, we have Lotus by Little Sims. And as you know, her EPs had made my honorable mentions list last year. This year, this is the first album of hers to actually officially make my top 25. And wow, all I got to say is what an incredible project from her. This UK rapper like dives deep into her psyche, including topics of betrayal in the legal battle between her and her former producer, who actually stole like over £1 million from her. This album also tackles her vulnerability, her rage, and the pain from the legal battle, and of course, being a Black UK woman in a male dominated hip hop scene. This album continues to blend jazz, soul, rock, and even has some, distorted guitar sounds and even some acoustic guitar sounds for some of the tracks. And for me, some of the standout tracks for me are going to be Thief, Lion, Free, Blood, and the end track Blue with Sampha. Coming in at number 15 is Starline by Chance the Rapper. And Chance the Rapper's back, y'all. For real, for real. I was hesitant to tune in considering his last project, The Big Day, like failed in more than one way, obviously. But I was thoroughly impressed with this project. Like Chance throughout the album admits his past failures and laces this project with like good production and just overall just very good themes. Just like songs like Drapetomania and like Gun in Your Purse don't really cater to me. They cater to a much younger crowd. Song Tree is obviously, a silly weed song. I mean, it's gonna be there. But you can hear Chance's introspective raps about his people and the Negro problem and letters where he directs letters specifically to the church. You also have Chance looking inward and reflecting on life and growth with his songs like Space and Time, which is by far my favorite, excuse me, my favorite track on this album. And of course, No More Old Men is also a very, very introspective song. And this was a great project and a great comeback project for Chance in general. And I definitely hope that he is able to recover the momentum that he lost. Coming in at number 14, I have Desired Crowns by Shay Noir and Love the Genius. And wow, what an amazing and dope project by these two ladies. Shay Noir and Love come in with like absolute bars on this project. The two queens rap like the rent is due, and the crown for best female MC is for the taking. The production is just really, really crazy. Even Shay Noir actually produces a couple tracks herself. This album was once again a sign of like boom bap traditional sounds like coming back, excuse me, with two MCs flowing off of each other. The way that they bounce off of each other is absolutely incredible. My only critique about this album is way too short. It really left me craving for more. But all in all, this is an amazing project, and I hope you all get a chance to tune in. Some standout tracks for me include Topanga, Some of Two Evils, Flight, and Conquer. Coming in at number 13, I have Supreme Clientele by Ghostface Killah. As I take a sip of water here. While not like the heavy hitter that Supreme Clientele was, Supreme Clientele 2 is like a return to form for the Wu-Tang OG. Once again, released through Nas and Mass Appeal's Legend Has It series. Goodness. Again, apologies, guys. This album was apparently a course correction from his album last year, which, yeah, people were saying, a lot of people were saying that was not Ghost. This album is definitely Ghostface. Like, no doubt about it. While Raekwon's album felt more patient, Ghost's album feels more urgent and grittier from his Wu-Tang brother. Ghost doesn't reinvent the wheel here with this project, and as a listener, you're going to hear more of the same gritty street raps of tragedy and drug play corners. But I really have this album ranked pretty high because I think that Ghost does an amazing job describing these stories. And also, I'm a Ghostface fan, so of course this is going to be high on my list. But anyway, this album really, really reminded me why I'm a Face fan. So definitely Ghostface fan, because Face is Scarface. But anyway, definitely take a listen to this album. Standout tracks are, of course, Iron Man, Love Me Anymore with Nas. Nas has been laced throughout all of these albums. He's been just dropping fire verses, I promise you. And The Trial featuring Raekwon and Method Man. Those are my standout tracks. Coming in at number 12, I have Black Hole Superette by A$AP Rock. Now, A$AP Rock is a another underground hip hop legend. And he actually dropped 2 projects this year. However, because of time constraints, I was only really able to listen to this one. But this album is jam packed full of like intricate lyrics, crazy storytelling, and some very dense tracks. ASAP really takes like a look inward into this album and packs the album full of like rants, broken memories, and like other obscure things such as strange pets and strange snacks. It's as if the album was made as if you were like a customer at 7-Eleven, and while in the 7-Eleven, he starts deep diving about life and exploring different questions and curiosities about life, which is really crazy, really crazy concept. But it worked. So there it is. Standout tracks for me include 1010 Wins, I think that's how you say it. John something, Snail Zero, which is really a strange song about a snail. It's crazy. And Ice Sold Here. Coming in at number 11, I have The Boy Who Played the Harp by Dave. And as we all know, Dave is one of UK's strongest MCs currently, and he comes back to form with this latest album. But what he does this time is he takes a very mature and introspective route with this album, even deeper than the other material that he's dropped. And he confronts themes such as ego, faith, guilt, and really the loneliness of success. A big part of this album sees Dave like compare his ongoing struggles to like the struggles of King David of the Bible. At least that's how I'm seeing that allegory. And he also talks about how his generation views morals. He wonders about its place in history. He has themes of sexual violence and male silence / complacency. And overall, I just really love this project. And I think Dave really brings in some more mature themes than he had in his previous ones. So, chapter 16, Fairchild, The Boy Who Played the Harp as the title track, and No Weapons, especially No Weapons. Those are my favorite tracks of this album. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the top 10 of 2025. So, coming in at number 10, we have Showbiz by Mike. And what more can I say about Mike, man? He's really like one of my top MCs this year. Especially with this project. This album is really more like a collection of memories and movement, excuse me. And you definitely have some very non-traditional production. But what you may really appreciate about this album is the way that he tells the stories, because the storytelling is kind of like what A$AP Rock was doing in his previous album. It's like it's built off of fragments of his memory and short reflections, but it's the lyricism, of course, is really, really dense. And this MC, I believe he's only 24 at that. Like, he has such a long way to go, and the path for Mike is bright. And with this album, he really hits home with a lot of the themes and a lot of the storytelling. Like, here are my standout tracks. I got Man in the Mirror. I got What You About to Do, Showbiz, When It Rains, and Pieces of a Dream. Really, really check out this album if you have not gotten the opportunity. All right, so coming in at number 9 is Infinite by Mobb Deep. Once again, this is another album released through Nas's Mass Appeal and Legend Has It series. And honestly, it was nice to hear Prodigy one more time. I think Havoc does a really, really good job of being able to blend in his raps with some of Prodigy's older raps and create this wonderful masterpiece. It's really hard because when you're dealing with posthumous albums, sometimes they work, a lot of the times they don't. But Havoc's production and his crafting of this album have really just made this album a masterpiece. And once again, Prodigy shows that he was one of the top lyricists of his time. Rest in peace, man. And Havoc is no slouch either on the mic, but especially when it comes to the production, he is top tier. So with that, these are my standout tracks for Infinite. You got Against the World, Look at Me, the M, the O, the B, obviously, Down for You, and Taj Mahal. All right. Now, coming in at number 8, we have Ego Trip with John Michelle and Anthony James. I believe this is the debut album for rapper John Michelle, who I believe is out of Philly, if I'm not mistaken. And what I really, really love about this album is that it's like a story weaved throughout this album between the struggles of faith, being humble, ego, that hunger for more, and humility. And I've noticed that a lot of rappers this year have had albums that dealt with, the struggles between faith and their ego. And I think I really loved that this year because, that's what I love about rap and what I love about hip hop and what I love about people is that they're letting you into their lives and they're giving you a window into their daily struggles. And what it shows is that they're people too, and that they're human too, and that they deal with all these things, especially when it comes to rap artists who are trying to become famous and whatnot. And now they got to deal with, okay, well, I'm hungry to be a rapper, but at the same time, I'm just still struggling, dealing with my faith and how that might conflict, being a rapper and being, someone who grew up under the Bible, and also trying to keep myself humble and, trying to find that humility throughout all of this. So I really liked Michelle's raps. And then, of course, the production by Anthony James was so beautifully well done, and how he was able to chop soul samples, make some live sounding drums and horns, and blend them in with all the tracks. Like it sounds like it could be a funk slash gospel album, but it's hip hop. So definitely take a listen to this album if you have not done so. Definitely pay attention to John Michelle if you haven't heard of him yet. And my standout tracks for this album are Save Me, Preacher, Nobody, and Sunday Morning Genesis. Coming in at number 7, I have God Does Like Ugly by Jid, Jitty, JID, whatever you want to call him. But Jid definitely drops a really, really solid album here. For me, I think that the Forever Story and the Never Story are better, but I do love the themes of this album specifically. And I had to go back and re-listen to it just to be sure that I will put this in my top 10, and it definitely deserves that spot. Jid, once again, tackles the weight of balancing faith, family, and community struggles. And you could just consistently see that throughout this album. I'm not going to dive that deep into it because I believe that it repeats a lot of the themes that previous albums that I've just mentioned on this list dive into. That being said, Jid's lyricism, once again, is just like phenomenal in the way that he is able to create his rhyme schemes, like rhymes within rhymes within rhymes. It is absolutely phenomenal. But big shout out to Jid. Of course, my favorite track is Community with Clips. That track is bar none one of the best of 2025. Of course, you got the beginning track, You Ugly, Skate, K-Word, and Glory. All of those are wonderful, wonderful tracks. And again, please be sure that you take a listen to this album. Coming in at number 6 is from the private collection of Saba and No ID by Saba and No ID. It's really not much to say about this album. I think Saba tackles some of the same issues that he has in previous works, such as, of course, his faith, community issues, and things that happen specifically within the Black community. But what I do love is, of course, his teaming up with No ID, who is a legendary producer within Chicago. And they were just able to create such a beautifully crafted album. And I think that from a sonic standpoint, Saba also gets a lot of help, not only from No ID, but he also gets some help from Raphael Sadiq as well. You hear BJ the Chicago Kid laced in the beginning. It is such a fantastic listen. And I recommend anybody who hasn't definitely check this out. One song that I really want to point out is Head Wrap, because it deals with the struggles of Black hair, man, having locks, and his journey of having locks and cutting his hair, then having to regrow it back, as well as like certain other family members having locks as well. That is such a wonderfully crafted track. So big shout out to Saba, man. I've been a huge, huge fan of Saba since Bucket List. And I know a lot of people really may not know who Saba is still, but the man has dropped some incredible work in the 2010s and even into the 2015s. So please be sure that you check out this work. Also, if you've watched Ironheart, he was definitely the rapper who was at the speakeasy slash club that they went to in Chicago. He was the one who was rapping. So big shout out to Saba, man. He's doing incredible work once again. Coming in at number 5, I have Magic Alive by McKinley Dixon. And this album is such a great blend of jazz, hip hop, gospel, and soul sounds. One of the biggest things about this album is its story. It focuses like on the story of a kid dealing with the death of a friend, and it details like the emotions of love, loss, grief, coping mechanisms, and ultimately the horrors of gun violence. And I just say that this is such an incredible album. It was honestly top 3 until I listened to the others, but this is such a great album. If you have not checked out McKinley Dixon's Magic Alive, I'd highly, highly recommend that you do so, because at some point in time, all of us have dealt with either losing a friend or losing a family member, and the grief that comes with it, whether we are in like what they call the 7 stages of grief or just how we process grief, it's always different. So this album is an encapsulation of how you are feeling when you lose a loved one. And so some standout tracks for me are Crooked Stick, We're Outside, Rejoice, Run, Run, Run Part 2, and Could Have Been Different. I will say that this was hard putting this at number 5, because I thought that this could have been album of the year, but the top 5 really, really are some strong, super strong candidates. All right, guys, coming in at number 4, and honestly might be number 1 on a lot of people's list, is Gollywog by Billy Woods. Now, this album, when I say that it is unconventional, I mean it is unconventional. This album plays like a horror film. Like, it is so unsettling and unnerving. It's very like disorienting. And when you listen to it, it just makes you feel uneasy. And Billy Woods rapping, or spoken word, whatever you want to call it, because again, he doesn't really rap on beat, but the words that he says is like he's just very calm, he's very still, and it is so spooky. It sends like a chill down your spine. The way he talks about certain topics throughout this album, it's just so crazy. It's really not a lot I could say outside of those descriptors for this album, because it just feels like, again, a horror film. And Alchemist, Conductor Williams, Kenny Segal, and LP, what they do is they curate these sounds to make it sound like an album of just like rot and psychological decay, as hip hop golden age puts it. It is such a trip. If you have not listened to it, and you're one of those people who love spooky sounding albums, or just spooky movies in general, I recommend you listen to this, because this is like, wow, okay, am I in an album or am I in a horror film? Like, it is that spooky. Here are like some of my favorite tracks. We got Misery, Black Christmas, Waterproof Mascara, Counterclockwise, and Corinthians. And honestly, if I could say for this album, Billy Woods, he feels as if like he's a master of suspense, and he's really just telling a story of existential dread. And yeah, that's kind of how I felt listening to this album. It's really, really insane. And honestly, again, it might be number 1 on a lot of people's lists. It came close to it for mine, but I have some other projects in front. So that is Gollywog by Billy Woods. Coming in at number 3 is Alfredo 2 with Freddie Gibbs and Alchemist. And what I like about Alfredo 2 is that we see a shift from like the nocturnal hazy sounds of Alfredo, and we get more like brighter and sunlit sounds from this album. So Alchemist really draws on those 60s and 70s samples to curate this album. And Gibbs, once again, is just as sharp as ever. From his mixing, from Alchemist's mixing to Freddie Gibbs's rhyming of his brash confidence and then humor, and then mixing that with his introspective raps. This was truly a great, great, great project. And honestly, once again, might be number one on a lot of people's lists. As much as Freddie Gibbs and as controversial as he knows how to drop some really, really great projects. So if you have not checked out Alfredo 2, please be sure that you do so. Here are my standout tracks: 1995, A Thousand Mountains, Lavish Habits, I Still Love Her or HER, and Lemon Pepper Steppers. He really, really dropped a very, very dope project. Now, my top two albums were very, very, very close. And when I say very close, I mean very, very close. Like literally, there's a hair thin line between number one and number two, and they could honestly flip flop depending on the mood. But ultimately, this is where I ended at. At number two, I have Cabin in the Sky by De La Soul, which once again was dropped through Nas's Mass Appeal Records and through his Legend Has It series. But one thing that I love about this album, Cabin in the Sky, is like it's built like a reflection without diving too deep into sentimentality. And especially considering that this is their first project that they created after Dave's passing. Shout out to Trugoy the Dove, rest in peace. Plug 2, we miss you. And what I love about this album is that throughout the album, at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end, you get a narration from Giancarlo Esposito. And it begins with him doing roll call for all the producers and guest features that actually help create this album. And of course, throughout this album, you'll hear some of Dave's words. You'll hear him rapping at times. You'll hear some of his feelings and his emotions. But what I love about this is that it doesn't just rest on its laurels with the sentiment that Dave is no longer here. Instead, it invites you on this journey through De La Soul's music and treats this album as if it's a continuation of their previous albums and masterpieces. And the guests come into this album to share that experience of celebration and reflection with Pod and with Maceo. And the features feel like what Hip Hop Golden Age says, and I quote, a gathering that spans eras where guests step in to contribute to a shared moment rather than steal attention. So when I say that this could have been number one and almost was number one, I mean it. Like, this album was created masterfully. And I know that there's probably not a lot of De La Soul fans out there who are in the younger generation, but the old heads know. The old heads know. The real ones know. De La Soul has been a staple in hip hop since the late 80s. And this album, even with Dave no longer being here, this album does not take away from any of their greatness. And in fact, I think that this album puts their greatness on an even higher pedestal. So, man, big shout out to De La Soul. Here are my standout tracks. We got You Don't Stop, Good Health, A Quick 16 for Mama, Just How It Is Sometimes, Run It Back, Different World, The Silent Life of a Truth, and NF. Now, I think it's no surprise what my number one is. It's Let God Sort Them Out by Clipse. This was a highly anticipated album for me and for a lot of people. And Clipse shows that they have not lost a step in their lyricism at all. And matter of fact, Malice shows that his lyricism is, if anything, it's even better than what it was in the past. I've always said, like, it's really kind of hard to differentiate between Pusha T and Malice, but on this album, Malice shows that he really about that shit. That them lyrics that these two have, listen, the lyricism in this album, the themes in this album are incredible. Of course, starting with The Birds Don't Sing and how they were dealing with the passing of their parents at different times, going, and of course, into Chains and Whips to POV. You know, they continue to dish out the luxury coke raps, and once again showing that I should be disgusted that I'm not as rich as them, but still, what I like about this album is that it's dark, it's gritty. It takes us back to those gritty street raps that we've had in the past. Pharrell's production is 100% absolutely incredible throughout this album. And honestly, it's kind of hard to say whether this album will win a rap album of the year versus GNX, but it's close, and it's really close. I listen, that God Sort 'Em Out is really one of those ones. And this isn't a story about sales with any of these albums that I've chosen for my list. This is a story about rappers who are letting you experience what they are experiencing and showing you that, especially the elder statesmen of hip hop, the people who are in their 50s and pushing their 60s, they're showing you they're still elite. They are still elite. And I also think that might be a little bit of a problem because the younger generation, they're not stepping up to that plate in the ways that we expect them to. They're not superstars, and that's why we keep leaning in to the last great superstars of our time, or at least of the last generation or of the blog era. But I have a feeling that we got some young and up and comers who are ready to take that next step into superstardom, and it doesn't just have to be based on what the radio plays or what the corporate radio stations are doing. But this album here, it shows that you're never too old to tap into what you were great at. And Let God Sort 'Em Out is an incredible album from start to finish. All right. Here are my standout tracks. You already know The Birds Don't Sing. I already said Chains and Whips. So Be It. POV. Ace Trumpets. Mike Tyson Blow to the Face. Earnings Before Interest, Taxes, Depreciation, and Amortization, or EBITDA. FICO, and of course, Let God Sort 'Em Out / Chandeliers, where Nas once again comes through with a fire feature. And Nas also had a phenomenal 2025, as did all of these people on my list, especially Billy Woods. I am so excited to hear what 2026 has in store. But ladies and gentlemen, that is my list for the top 25 hip hop albums of 2025. So, in case you didn't stay for the entire episode and you want me to go through my list one more time, I will be happy to do so. So, ladies and gentlemen, here once again are my top 25 hip hop albums for 2025. Goodness, let's try that again. Here are my top 25 hip hop albums for 2025. At number 25, Can't Kill God with Bullets by Conway the Machine. Number 24, Everything Is a Lot by Wale. Number 23, A Murder of Crows with Mick Jenkins and Email. Number 22, Who Did the Body by Mona Leo. Number 21, The Emperor's New Clothes by Raekwon. Number 20, Light Years by Nas and DJ Premier. Number 19, Mercy by Arm & Hammer. Number 18, Thy Kingdom Come by the Suicide Boys. Number 17, Live, Laugh, Love by Earl Sweatshirt. Number 16, Lotus by Little Sims. Number 15, Starline by Chance the Rapper. Number 14, Desired Crowns by Shay Noir and Love the Genius. Number 13, Supreme Clientele 2 by Ghostface Killah. Number 12, Black Hole Superette by Aesop Rock. Number 11, The Boy Who Played the Harp by Dave. Number 10, Showbiz by Mike. Number 9, Infinite by Mobb Deep. Number 8, Ego Trip by John Michelle and Anthony James. Number 7, God Does Like Ugly by Jid. Number 6, From the Private Collection of Saba and No ID by Saba and No ID. Number 5, Magic Alive by McKinley Dixon. Number 4, Gollywog by Billy Woods. Number 3, Alfredo 2 with Freddie Gibbs and the Alchemist. Number 2, Cabin in the Sky by De La Soul. And number 1, Let God Sort 'Em Out by Clips. Let me know what your top 25 hip hop albums of 2025 were. If you have any agreements, disagreements, let me know in the comments on any of the shorts that I post, whether it be on YouTube or whether it be on TikTok. Let me know in the comments, of course, if you've watched this episode and what you think about my list and what you thought about my honorable mentions. And of course, if there are any albums that I missed, because listen, there's a lot of rap music that I just did not get to this year. Unfortunately, I did not listen to as many albums as I did the previous year. But if there are any albums that you recommend, please be sure that you let me know in the comments. Let me know what I missed. If there was any albums that you want me to listen to, please let me know so I can go ahead and, of course, try to grade it on my curve and see if it could have been added to this list. I do know that specifically there was one album that could have made my list this year as well, and that was an album by this artist called Navy Blue called The Sword and the Soaring. Unfortunately, I listened to it too late, so I was not able to add it to this list. But still, it could have been added, and it definitely could have been a top 10 album of 2025. That being said, again, if there's any music that I missed, please be sure that you let me know in the comments. If you really love this episode, please be sure that you like, share, subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, please be sure that you hit that notification bell. And of course, please be sure that you tell your friends, tell your mama, tell your daddy, tell your dog, tell your cat, once again, about the Chaotic Culture Podcast. With that being said, it's time for me to go, ladies and gentlemen. My sinuses are going crazy right now because, again, I'm recovering from COVID. So I'm trying to get better because, unfortunately, people got to work in the morning. But once again, thank you for tuning in to the Chaotic Culture Podcast. Please, 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 please be sure that you have a happy new year. And with that, let's go ahead and sign off. So once again, please be sure that you subscribe to the Chaotic Culture Podcast on your favorite DSP. Please be sure once again that you subscribe to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/Chaotic Culture Pod. And of course, you could join at any of the levels. Once again, we still appreciate your support. You can follow us on Facebook at the Chaotic Culture Podcast page. You can also follow us on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Chaotic Culture Pod. You can follow us on Blue Sky at chaoticculture.bsky.social. You can follow us on X, even though X's algorithm is absolutely cooked right now. You can still follow us over there at Chaotic Culture 1. And of course, you can follow me, Ked the Pro. That's K3D the Pro on all social media. And of course, big shout out to my co-hosts and whatnot. You can definitely go and follow Sappy at Scraps14 on all social media, Scuba Steve on all social media at Scuba Steve 1428. You can follow Law on Instagram at L.JR_96. And of course, you can follow him on X/Twitter at Law96_. And that's all that I got, ladies and gentlemen. So thank you again for tuning in to another edition of the Chaotic Culture Podcast. So until next time, folks, remember, embrace the culture. Chaos rules. Be blessed. Be safe. God is love. Happy 2026. And I am out of here. See y'all on the other side, and deuces.
So what's the word?
You are now tuned in to the Chaotic Culture Podcast. And